This is our Hangout. I'm in my office right now and have my favorite cup of coffee and my favorite cup right here. And we're going to talk about PACS administrator careers tonight. And before we start doing this a little bit, I want to share you some of my thoughts. I have a little presentation I was going to show to you. So hang out here till I bring it up and get a little bit familiar with the Hangout capabilities. And so we'll talk about PACS administrator career opportunities, and if you think about those, there are actually 5 different tracks. If you see you as a PACS administrator there in the center, there's a couple of areas you can grow. First of all, you can go to the ologies, I call it. You can go cardiology and some of the other areas. Let's go to the right side, and if you see that on your screen right there on the right. Then you could also migrate or go into get some some experience with lab and pharmacy, and this is all within the department or within the hospital itself. Another growth path will be I kind of for vertical up will be more into the enterprise, and if you think about enterprise archiving and electronic medical record. However, there's also career opportunities in the two. I call it the diagonal, or this is independent consulting as well as at the vendor side. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you think about the vendor side, that's what we want to focus on tonight. There are opportunities as PACS administrators on the vendor side. There are companies that outsource and basically provide PACS administrator services to hospitals. Second, there's also project management on the vendor side. A lot of vendors would like to hire experienced PACS administrators to work as a project manager to manage the projects that implement the PACS systems. Then in addition, the third one would actually be technical sales support. Technical sales support will be not necessarily being the frontline sales, but if there's a question, a salesperson might need a lot of help about how do the PACS systems work and how do all the components and parts being implemented. Then there is an application training. I see a lot of PACS administrators moving into application level training, how to use the system, and particular actually vendors like those PACS administrators. If they, for example, used a particular vendor for a long time, they really want to hire those and train future prospective users. And then also the service support. So these are some of the potential careers. And what we like to do tonight is I'd like to introduce you a special guest. It's John Evers. He's the famous or infamous guy of the PACS administrator. Hey, John, how are you doing? So John, by the way, do you know how many hits you had on that famous video by now?
I think it's up to about 28,000.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it amazes me. I can't even imagine that many people know what PACS is. So
that's pretty cool. So basically, John, what I was going to do is talk to you a little bit about PACS administrator as a career, and particularly, you've flipped a little bit back and forth to the vendor side. But before we do that, maybe you should talk a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in PACS? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I actually started out on the vendor side. When I graduated from electronics school, I worked for Bennett X-Ray, which is an old X-ray company. I started out in their R&D department, just fresh out of school. They had me, essentially my job was they'd hand me a schematic and I would build it. And sometimes the lines weren't drawn correctly, and I get a lot of electric shocks and start fires. But
wow,
it was a great way to learn. It was a great way to learn, so it was very worth it. Yeah. From there, I moved to servicing MRIs. Yeah. And how the kind of PACS thing happened was we had a particular MRI from a particular manufacturer, I won't name, because their machine was break every day. And wow. Essentially, I would go into the office. to work on this machine, and eventually it just came to a 9 to 5 thing. I would just kind of hang out at this one place, waiting for it to break, fix it, and then that was my day. So I
Wow.
spent a lot of time around the MRI techs, and we just watched what they did, learned what they did. Eventually, they let me kind of fill in sometimes and do patients. I helped them out on the weekends or at nights if they needed somebody to fill in.
You'll
And I
be there
kind of
anyway, right? Yeah.
right. I was there anyway. I was kind of
Yeah.
watching it constantly, so I learned how to do MRIs, and from that I kind of turned that into a career as a MRI tech.
Sure.
So that's how I learned my clinical side.
Cool.
So I kind of went back and forth, and the doctors liked to have me there because I could scan all day, and if the machine broke, I would fix it and then go back to scanning. So
Yeah, that was
they
cool.
liked having me around. Uh, so then when PACS came around, this was, oh gosh, about 10 years ago, 10 or
Wow.
11 years ago, I figured that would be a good mix since I had both the clinical side and the IT side learned. I thought PACS would be a good way to go, and it's turned out great for me. So I was
Sure.
happy I got into it.
Now, there's always a lot of discussion about, no, we need to have a clinical background. No, we need to have an IT background. Now, you're kind of a
Right.
mix. You have kind of both. But do you have any preference, or do you really need both? Or what is it with your position or opinion or thoughts on it?
Okay. I think you definitely need both. You probably
Right.
need more IT than you do clinical, but it definitely
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. And I know fellow PACS administrators who have started both sides of the fence, who were
Yeah.
strictly IT and no clinical, and strictly clinical and no IT, and they've all become great at what they do. So I
Oh,
think
okay.
if you're on either side, you can definitely do it. But I think you're definitely using your IT skills more than your clinical skills. But it definitely doesn't hurt to have both.
Oh, okay. Now, I actually did a little blog just on the future of the PACS administrator, and I get these questions a lot. Like, I see a lot of PACS administrator in our classes, and they said, well, what is the future? What do you think that we're going to be 5 years from now? And you have seen a lot of changes in PACS administrators. If you would look in a crystal ball, or have us look in your crystal ball, how do you think that a PACS administrator careers would evolve over the next 5 years? What do you think? Is there a
Well,
future?
I think there's definitely been a lot of changes. I think the biggest change has been well, two of the biggest changes is like networking knowledge.
Oh,
I
okay.
think when I first started out, PACS was very new, and a lot of the modality vendors just didn't know networking at all. They knew how to get their machines set up to to film cameras, but really nobody had any knowledge about networking. And I ended up a lot of times helping the vendors out, configuring their modalities to send to
Yeah.
the PACS. So
Okay.
networking knowledge has gotten a lot better and easier, and everybody kind of know. All the vendors seem to know their stuff very well now, so that's not as much of a concern as it used to be. I think the biggest thing for the future is storage.
Yeah.
These tests get bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, if you had said, even 5 years ago, or that the average MRI study was going to be 800 pictures, or a CT CAT scan was going to be 8 or 900 pictures, they
Yeah.
would thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now that's the average, and
Yeah.
you'll see like the vendor neutral archives becoming a
Right.
big thing. I think that's a huge change for the better.
Yeah.
As far as what happens when you migrate, it's going to be great to have something like that. So I think that's one of the biggest changes is just changes in archiving and
So,
storage.
so, so sheer volume. So, I mean, if a PACS administrator would, in the past, had to deal maybe monitor a couple of studies, now it has to be, it's kind of growing exponentially, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 We have a. I mean, we used to, many sites when I would start, you'd run the backups at night. They take maybe 2 or 3 hours to run, and then now we have sites that are taking most of the day to archive their previous day studies because it's
Wow.
so much data just being
Yeah.
stored. It's amazing.
But don't you think that we have much more tools than we used to have? Like in the early days, it was really kind of service tools and cryptic things, and you have to be almost like a Unix guru, and right?
Right. Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the tools have gotten a lot better, and there's some great free tools out there. I mean, almost every tool I have is I've gotten for free off of the internet. There's a lot of people working with DICOM, have wonderful projects going. The Osiris project for Mac is unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
that does things that you can't even imagine PACS doing a couple of years ago for thousands and thousands of dollars. And here you
Wow.
have this free uh, software that you can does 3D reconstruction. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's
But
some
but of,
great stuff out there.
yeah, but also some I guess some of the sniffer tools. Do you actually use those like even Wireshark and stuff? Is that something that you typically would use or?
I do use it
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. Most of the software we work with, a lot of the vendors have actually built some good tools into their
Yeah.
software nowadays, so that you can pretty much use those to find out most of your problems. And that's
Okay.
gotten a lot better too in the years past. I think people have realized how important networking is, and they've accordingly made their tools better.
Right. No, so you worked both on the quite a few years on the user side and quite a few years on the vendor side. And if you would tell me the top three differences between working, so imagine there will be a person right now that is working in a hospital said, what would be my benefit or what would be different if I would work for a vendor? What any idea? So yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say one of the biggest differences between the two is dealing with doctors. And I don't
Okay.
know if you want to say it's a plus or a minus,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I mean, if you're a PACS admin, you're dealing a lot more with doctors. If you're a vendor, you're dealing a lot more with the other PACS admins and administrators. So
Okay.
that's got its pluses and minuses, but that's a huge difference I notice when I've worked one as opposed to the other. You're not
Right.
really dealing with the physicians as much. So uh, I would say that the PACS administrator is actually more of a challenging job. If you're looking
Yeah.
for a challenge,
Yeah.
I think the PACS administrator is a bigger challenge because you're dealing with so many other factors. As a vendor, you're usually only dealing with one piece of equipment or one type of equipment day in and day out, whereas a PACS admin has to deal with modalities and the PACS and cameras and just to have people skills with the doctors. It's a lot more challenging, I think, and interesting. You're never bored being a PACS
Yeah.
administrator.
Yeah. Okay.
There's always something new and different to deal with. So I think
But I
that's a
mean, yeah. So if you were saying, well, I've had it, I don't want to see any more doctors, and I still want to use my skills that I do. So then on the vendor side could be a potential good go path, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just depends on who you'd like to work with, I guess, with the physicians.
Right.
And I've been very lucky. On my video, it kind of makes fun of
Yeah.
doctors, but and every one of the questions in there I've actually been asked. So I mean, they're kind
Sure.
of sometimes get silly, but I've had really great relationships with the doctors. They've always been nice. I've had radiologists show up to my 40th birthday party, so
Oh, perfect.
we're good. We're all good friends. So it's a good relationship, but that's definitely a difference. You won't be dealing with physicians as much when you're in the vendor side.
Now, is it also not like on the vendor side? Is it not a little bit more 8 to 5 job, or is it kind of the
It
same? Do you still on
it
the
is.
the pager and or
Yeah, it depends. You still have call. I worked service for vendors, so you're still on call. Maybe not as much. It depends, like how big your hospital is. When I was at a bigger hospital that had 4 or 5 PACS
yeah?
administrators, you took call once every 4 or 5 weeks. And if you were at a smaller facility and you're just the only one, you're taking call all the time. So that gets a little
Uh, yeah.
monotonous. But I would say the call is, from my experience, about the same
Oh, okay.
between vendor and and uh, and PACS administrator. So don't think if you're switching careers you're going to get out of being on call, because it just
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
happen.
Do you see different career paths? Do you think that the same career opportunities work in the hospital as work in this vendor, or what do you think about that?
I think I definitely think anybody who's good at PACS administration can move into the vendor side because they look for that. I think the biggest problem I've found is a lot of vendors
Yeah.
don't like to hire from their customers. Let's say you have a
Oh,
like a
yeah.
GE PACS, it's going to be hard for you to get a job with GE working as a field service person if because they don't like to say they're stealing their customers' tech. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of tricky business, and it does happen, but most of the companies are kind of wary about hiring you for that particular,
Yeah.
the company that you're with. So that can be tricky sometimes.
But but
But the other side is exactly the opposite. I mean, if you wanted to go into a hospital and you work for GE and they have a GE PACS, they'll snap you up in a minute. So
yeah. But what about the career path? Do you think that is there a ceiling somewhere as a PACS administrator, or is there more of a ceiling than on the vendor side, or what do you think?
I think salary wise, you're
Yeah, well,
probably
yeah,
better off being on the vendor side. I've
yeah, okay,
found the vendors
yeah,
pay more. Some PACS administrators I know are not paid well at all, and definitely not paid what they're worth. Uh, so I think the potential for earning more is with
sure.
the potential for earning more is with the vendor. The potential for learning more is with the PACS administrator.
Oh, yeah. So you have to be a little bit careful at the vendor side that you're not being pigeonhole. I mean, if you were, I don't know, just mention something. Let's say you're a GE centricity specialist. You
Right.
might have been a specialist 15 years ago, and you're still a CE
Exactly.
centricity specialist. And how do you know what's going on there? That's something that GE doesn't offer. You might not
Exactly.
know, anything about, I don't know, EMRs or VNAs
Right.
and or pathology that might come along and
Mhm.
endoscopy if
Right.
that's
Oh
not
yeah.
common.
You get it's forced out. Like for a while, my one of the vendors I work with kind of moved me to the HL7 group,
Right.
and I learned a lot about HL7. I almost forgot everything else I
Yeah.
knew about DICOM, and
Yeah.
it's tricky. You do get pigeonholed. So I mean, if you're into learning, if you're become a PAX admin, if you're into earning, become a vendor, work with the vendor.
I like that. Learning of specs administrator, learning defender. And I think everybody has to kind of make his own decision and see what's best for the future. Um, I don't know. But still, don't you think that maybe at the vendor side, if you have a large vendor, there might be just because of the economy of scale. I mean, more opportunities because let's say in a hospital there's only one or two, maybe three PACS administrators. If
Right.
you're within a vendor, there might be a group of 10, 15 IT guys, service support people, 25, who knows how many. So,
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
think your career will definitely advance more at a vendor.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
this is very you could become a PACS administrator, and after that, I don't know what you'd what you'd do.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
head of IT or something, but you probably will be a hospital administrator, or I don't know what career path would be after that. But I mean, I always enjoyed it, so I can't complain. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Okay.
think your potential with the vendor is going to be a bigger one.
So you work on the vendor side. You would go back in a heartbeat back to the user side, do you think?
I would. I really enjoyed both. I have nothing bad to say about being a PAX admin. I have nothing bad to say about being a vendor. I've always liked both. I mean, they both have their different challenges for sure, but I enjoyed both. I got along great with doctors and the clinical people, and I get along great with the software and hardware people at the vendors. So.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about this earlier because I figured you'd ask me, and I
Yeah.
was trying to figure if I had a preference, and I really don't. I
Yeah,
really
okay.
enjoy both of them.
What about travel? Is it also the same, or I mean, if you go to a hospital, it's just 8 to 5. You go to a hospital every time,
Right.
unless if you have multiple hospitals, I guess.
Yeah. Another thing, and that depends. I traveled when I was a PAX admin. I traveled to take classes a lot
Oh yeah,
and to learn. But yeah, as far as traveling, outside the hospital wasn't that bad. And then when I was a vendor, you travel to do installs and things like that. So you're probably traveling more with a vendor, I would
yeah.
say.
But from the other hand, you have more opportunities to work from home too, don't you think
That's
so?
very true. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
did at. I worked for Sectra for a couple of years, and they were a PAX vendor, and I got to work out of the house, which was wonderful. My wife's still mad I gave that up. She says she liked me being home when the kids came home from school.
Of course,
But
yeah, of course.
and that, as wonderful as that sounds, you don't have to get dressed to go to work. You get up 5 minutes before you have to go to work. It's wonderful,
Yeah,
but you never see anybody else.
yeah.
And that gets tiresome too. You'd like to actually socialize and see other and talk to other people, and it gets kind of rough sometimes too. So
Well, maybe we
everything's
need
got its
to.
ups and downs. So
Yeah, maybe we need to do more hangouts.
that's probably a good idea. That probably would have saved me.
Yeah. Okay. John, thank you very much. Anything else to add? In conclusion, I mean, the PACS administrator, definitely there is a good career opportunity on both sides, and right, that's kind of in conclusion, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and if you're interested in a job at a vendor, I
Yeah.
mean, a PACS administrator, if you are a PACS administrator, they will look for you.
Oh yeah.
That's if you're well-rounded, your stuff, they would love to hire you. But
Hey,
again, it's kind of hard to get into the same company that you're dealing with, and
yeah,
unless
yeah. Well, maybe you need to wait. You need to tell the hospital, let's switch the vendor, and you go to the
right, yeah,
previous
to switch
vendors.
the vendor, and then after they do it, they leave.
Hey, John, thank you very much. I have another sip of my coffee.
Okay.
And this was a great hangout. Appreciate your time. And
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Good
okay,
to see you
take
again.
care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.